All right, everyone, back on Hamul, this time playing the 2-3 $5 bring-in game. First hand, we're playing a $20 double board bomb pot. We look down at ace, ace, jack, 6, single suited. Flops come out 7-2-2 with 2 spades and ace, 6-3 with 2 spades. Small blind now bets $200, and just a reminder, they have an interesting structure in these double board bomb pots where that's the capped amount. So once he bets that, the only options for everyone else is to either fold or call, and this is just going to be for the double board bomb pots. There are actually 2 other callers, and obviously now I'm up against at least 1 deuce here and probably a spade draw. So while I don't really love the fact that I really only have 1 out on the top board to beat a deuce, I think my hand's too strong here to fold. So I also make the call, and we're going 4 ways to 2 runouts. Turns bring out a 3 on the top and a 4 on the bottom. Rivers bring a king on the top and a 9 on the bottom. My opponents all turn over their hands. The early position player turns over king 8 of spades, so he made the nut flush on the bottom. Big blind turns over 10-7, 5-2, so he flopped a full house on the top. And the player to my right turned over queen 5, 3-2, so he makes a lower full house on the top, and the small blind and big blind are going to chop it up. I top up $200 before playing my next hand, which is ace 7, 7-5, single suited on the button. Fold to the cutoff, who makes it 15. I call, and the blinds call. So we're going 4 ways to a flop. Flop comes out 5-4-2 rainbow. Checks to me. I bet 35, and both the blinds call. So we're going 3 ways to a turn. I was going to give up on the turn unless I get some help, and help is what I get in a 7. Both my opponents check again. This time I bet 80, and only the small blind makes the call. So we're going heads up to a river. River brings a 9. My opponent checks again. I bet 100 here, trying to get some value from maybe 2 pair or potentially a lower set. He thinks a bit and folds, so we take it down. Here I look down at Jack, Jack, 10-9, single suited on the button. There is 1 early position limp. Over to Eric, who makes it 20. Folds to me, I make the call, and there are 2 calls behind, so we're going 4 ways to a flop. So Eric is actually the host of this game. It runs every Wednesday night at 5 o'clock. If you're interested in getting into the game, let me know and I can get you in contact with him. Flop comes Jack 8-5 with 2 spades. Over to Eric, who bets 80. I push everything in the middle. Folds back to Eric, who makes the call. He asks if I want to run it twice. I'm typically a one-time guy, but everyone here actually runs twice, so I agreed to go twice, and we're going to 2 runouts. Top runout brings a 4 on the top and a 4 on the river, so that's going to be us. Turn on the bottom brings a 7, which will also be us, but the river brings in the 9 of spades, which I knew hit him before he turned it over. And he turns over ace, ace, 10-3, double suited with spades, so we're going to chop it up here. Shortly after the previous hand and about an hour into the session, I look down at ace, queen, 7-4, double suited in the cutoff. There's an early position limp over to the hijack, who makes it 20. I call, and there are 2 other calls behind, so we're going 4 ways to a flop. Flop comes Jack 7-2 with 2 diamonds. Checks to me. I bet 40, and only the small blind makes the call, so we're going heads up to a turn. Turn brings a 5, now giving me a wheel draw as well. My opponent checks again, and I decide to take the free card, so still going heads up to a river. River brings in the front door flush with a 9 of diamonds. My opponent checks again. This time I bet 130. My opponent tanks a while. He asks me some different questions, trying to get some information from me. He asks me if I bluff ever. I tell him sometimes, but looking back, probably shouldn't have said anything. But he eventually makes the call, and I turn it over, and of course we're good. So taking it down here. Here, look down at ace, ace, king, jack, rainbow in middle position in another double board bomb pot. We go to flops of ace, 4-3, rainbow, and jack, 10-4 with 2 spades. Checks to me, I bet 200. Folds all the way over to the player to my right, whose name is Kevin. He goes by Big Kev, pretty cool guy. He makes the call, and we're going heads up to 2 runouts. Turns bring out a 3 on the top and a 2 on the bottom. Rivers bring a 6 on the top and a 5 on the bottom. My opponent turns over his hand. He has 10-10, 10-7, so we're going to chop it up here against his trips. This hand takes place about 30 minutes after the previous one, about 2 hours into the session. I look down at king, jack, 10-7, single suited on the button. It's actually a 6-way limped pot to a flop of jack, 9-4 with 2 spades. Checks all the way around to me. I bet 30, and there are 2 callers, so we're going 3 ways to a turn. Turn brings a king, now giving me a top 2. Both my opponents check again, and it did improve me, but I feel like queen 10 is pretty obvious, and both of these opponents I feel would check raise if they did have this hand, so I decided to take a free card, so we're still going 3 ways to a river. River brings another king. My opponents both check again, and obviously now I got to go for some value. I bet 65. First player folds, other player kind of shakes his head and says, I know you have it, but still throws in the 65, and I turn it over, and we're of course good. This hand takes place almost an hour after the previous hand, about 3 hours total into the session. I look down at 9, 8, 8, 7, double suited in the small blind. There are a couple limpers over to the cutoff who makes it 25. Button calls, I call, and there are 2 other callers. So we're going 5 ways to a flop. Flop comes king 8-5 with 2 spades. I check and action checks through, so still going 5 ways to a turn. Turn brings a 3, can't slow play anymore. I bet 110 and everyone folds, so we take it down. Here look down at 9, 9, 8, 8, double suited on the button. There are a couple limpers. Folds to me, I make it 25, and there are 4 callers, so we're going 5 ways to a flop. Flop comes ace 8-6 with 2 clubs. Checks to me, I bet 120, and there's only 1 caller, so we're going heads up to a turn. Turn brings a jack, now giving me a flush draw to go along with my set. My opponent checks, and got to continue putting the pressure on. There's definitely a lot of cards I'm not going to want to see on the river, so I bet 320, and my opponent eventually folds, so we take it down. This hand's about 3.5 hours into the session. I look down at king 7-4-2 single suited in middle position in a double board bomb pot. We go to flops of king 9-6 with 2 hearts and king 9-3 rainbow. Action checks to me, I check, and action checks through. So still going 9 ways to 2 turns. Turns bring a 4 on the top and a 7 on the bottom. When it checks to me, I now bet 200, and everyone folds over to Kevin to my right, who makes the call. So we're going heads up to 2 rivers. Rivers bring a jack on the top and a queen on the bottom. I say 2 pair, and he ends up mucking but says he also had 2 pair on both as well. So we're going to take this one down. This hand's about 4 hours into the session. I look down at king, queen, queen 3, single suited in late position. This is actually a 6-way limped pot to a flop of queen, jack 2 with 2 clubs. There's an early position bet of 15. I make it 60, and there's 1 caller. So we're going heads up to a turn. Turn brings a 7. I bet 160, and my opponent folds, so we take it down. Here look down at king, king, 3-2, single suited in the big blind. This is a 6-way limped pot to a flop of ace, king, jack, rainbow. I bet 20, and there are 2 callers, so we're going 3 ways to a turn. Turn brings an 8 of diamonds, bringing in the backdoor flush draw. I believe I would have been raised by a hand that beat me on the flop, so I believe I have the best hand, and I continue betting 85, and both players call, so we're going 3 ways still to a river. River brings a jack, and here I decide to continue betting in 255. The first player folds pretty quickly. The second player, who's named Kobe, I've played with him a couple different sessions at different casinos. He tanks for over a minute and mumbles some different things to himself, including number 1 rule is don't pay off the nits. Don't pay off the nits. So he says that, but is counting out some chips and eventually folds. He says he has king jack, and if he had that, pretty good fold. I guess hindsight's 20/20, but probably should have checked if, I believed they thought I had queen 10, but we're going to take it down regardless. Here, look down at queen jack 9-4 single suited in the cutoff in a straddled pot. We end up going 5 ways to a flop of queen 9-5 with 2 spades. Checks to me, I bet 45, and there are 2 callers, so we're going 3 ways to a turn. Turn bring in the front door flush with the 3 of spades. Both my opponents check to me, and I decide to check back for pot control. I don't think I can get value from a lower flush on both the turn and the river, so we're still going 3 ways to a river. River brings an 8. Both my opponents check to me again, and at this point, I'm pretty sure I have the best hand, so I bet 85. Over to Rip in early position. He's a older guy, regular here in the game. He then makes it 275. Other player folds back to me. So my initial reaction was he didn't have it. But then I kind of talked myself out of it, as usually people aren't going to take this line as a bluff. In low stakes PLO, if people check raise the river, they pretty much like 95 to 98% of the time have it. But, so I ended up taking for a little bit over a minute and ended up folding. And Rip ended up turning over ace, queen, 10-6 with no spades in his hand. So pretty good bluff by him. I have to give credit where credit is due. It never feels good to get bluffed. But, a couple of the guys, including Eric, were talking shit to Rip about how tight he was earlier in the session. So I just happened to be on the wrong end of him deciding to bluff randomly. So good bet by Rip here. Shortly after the previous hand, I looked down at 10-10-6-4 single suited in the small blind in a double board bomb pot. We go to flops of ace, king, 7 with 2 diamonds and 10-4-2 rainbow. I check over to a middle position player who bets the $200 cap. Folds to me, and I was hoping there would be at least 1 or 2 callers in between to make this an easier decision for myself, as obviously I really can't win the top board unless I get some kind of running cards. But despite all that, I still make the call, and there are 2 callers behind. So we're going 4 ways to 2 runouts. The turns bring a 4 on the top and a 6 on the bottom. The rivers bring a jack on the top and a 6 on the bottom. So that gives us the nuts on the bottom. I turn over my hand. Early position player turns over pocket aces, and the other 2 players muck. So we're going to end up chopping it up here. This hand is about 30 minutes after the previous hand and about 5 hours total into the session. I looked down at ace 998 single suited on the button in a straddled pot. We end up going 5 ways to a flop of 976 with 2 hearts. One of the players in early position just sat down. His name's Lance. He's a regular here. Me and him got involved in a number of pots in an earlier vlog. I'll link it up above for those interested. He checks. Everyone checks over to me. I bet 40, and Lance and another player call. So we're going 3 ways to a turn. Turn brings a 7. Both my opponents check to me, and in situations like this in the past, I've opted to check, but I don't really think it's the best play as, I don't want to bet too high to scare people off, but I obviously want to just build a pot here to be able to make a larger river bet. So for those reasons, I bet 70, and only Lance makes the call. So we're going heads up to a river. To give a little insight into the type of player Lance is, if you've seen the previous video that I linked up above, you'll kind of know, but he's pretty wild and crazy. He probably plays around 60 to 70% of hands, so you really honestly never know what he's going to have. River brings a king, and now he bets almost full pot of 275 back over to me. And despite the fact that he is a wild and crazy player and plays a lot of hands, this line just screamed pocket sevens to me. He flat called the flop when there was a straight out there. Then if he hit his quads, he would just want a flat to bring the other player in. And then the river, obviously he's going to want to try to get max value and just lead full pot. So I was actually kind of pained. I guess Lance kind of made a comment that I have such a pained look on my face because honestly, I did think he had pocket sevens for a little bit. But then after thinking, there's also going to be a number of hands that he's going to make this bet with that I can get some value from. So for those reasons, I just decided to go with the full pot bet and put him all in. And after about 2 seconds of him not calling, now I know that, or I believe I have the best hand. And he makes a comment that he's not going to be able to fold with that river card. And once he says that, I really assume that he has pocket kings. And he goes, I can't fold and make the call. So I say I have 9s full. He ends up turning over king 7. So pretty sick cooler, but happy to be on the right side of it. So these are some hands I decided not to play, and just going to give some brief explanation as far as why. So ace king 6-2, it does have 1 suit, but it's not the nut suit. The connectivity is not great. Having the 2 and the 6, you're going to make a second best straight. And, it just doesn't have many high cards. It has the ace and the king, but you're really only going to make 1 straight with that. So folded that for that reason. 8-5-4-3, it does have connectivity. It only has 1 suit, which is an 8 high suit, which is almost worthless, and just really no high cards. So folded that one. And then king 8-9-6, single suited to the king. This would be a hand maybe in late position. If it's like limped around, maybe I'll limp behind. But, it does have connectivity. It has 1 suit, which is not the nut suit, but really doesn't have many high cards besides the king. And, it's also just not going to be that great playing multi-way. This hand's about 30 minutes after the previous one, about 5.5 hours into the session. I looked down at ace 9-9-7, single suited in middle position. There's an early position raised to 15. I call, and there are 2 other callers. So we're going 4 ways to a flop. Flop comes jack 10-9 with 2 diamonds. Early position player bets 35. Folds to me, I call, and everyone else folds. So we're going heads up to a turn. Turn brings a 10. Now he checks to me. I bet 60. He immediately makes it 150. And I don't think I can be good at this point, so I fold. And this player's name's Mitch, really cool guy. He ends up turning his hand over, and he has king, queen, jack, jack. So flopped the straight and had the top set as backup. So he's going to take it down here. Shortly after that hand, I ended up racking up, played for about 6 hours in total.
What's up, guys? Wayne back here with you. So today I was in for 600, out for 2640, so profit of 2040. If you haven't already done so, check out the previous video. I'll link it up here, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.